Hello, students. Today we'll be moving to the next unit, that is Unit 6 on International Marketing Channels. I'm Kolla Krishna Madhavi and I'll be walking you through this unit. The objectives of this unit is to first understand the different types of direct and indirect selling channels. Second, identify the importance of channel development, channel decisions, and the ways of selecting channel members. We'll also be covering different modes of transportation like air, water, road, etc. And finally, we'll also be looking at the different types of documents that are required and how they are used in international trade. In terms of the structure of today's session, we'll be walking through first the introduction, followed by direct and indirect selling channels, types of intermediaries, that is direct channels and indirect channels. Also talking in terms of channel development, channel adaptation, channel decisions. We'll also be talking in terms of how do we determine and what are the determinants of channel types and selection of those members. And finally, we'll be talking about modes of transportation, cargo insurance, packaging, containers, freight forward, and custom broker. Documentation is a very integral part of this process. And finally, we'll be looking at summary. So today is a fully packed session. We have a lot to cover. So let us start. In terms of an introduction, we need to understand the various types of channel distribution members and who are they and what is their fundamental role. So primarily they are required for us to move products from manufacturers to consumers. Here, since we are talking about international trade, in all probability, the manufacturing unit is located in the host country, or it may be from the home country, that is the country of origin. And from there, it may have to be moved to the actual point of sale. So the complications that are to be considered, whether it is a home country, that is the country of origin, versus the host country where a product may be manufactured, depending on that specific government's rules and regulations and how the business in turn is planning its long-term strategy. The requirement of channel members may be different. However, let us try to understand the different types of options that are available for any company and then go further into each of them. So first is in terms of direct and indirect selling channels. We have already spoken about briefly in the earlier units, but we'll talk about it in more depth today. So a manufacturer can either sell directly to end users abroad, but this type of channel is generally not suitable for consumer goods. Particularly, if you see, we have been talking about certain examples like apparel, food, etc., where in foreign markets, it may work out to be very, very expensive to set up your own channel distribution like you have done in the home country because of the cost, because of the infrastructure that is required, the office space, the warehouse and storage spaces. There are multiple other considerations. How much is the reach? What is the spread of your product? And then trying to cover all the retail outlets that may be willing to consider uh, storing your product and ultimately being your partner in selling them. So, what companies mostly do is that they try to select two principal channels of distribution when marketing abroad. So, within your own home country, the process may be different, but since we are focusing on international marketing, what are the two options available for a company? The direct and indirect selling channels. So, in a direct channel, where the host country has middlemen and the company is leveraging on those middlemen or agencies or agents in the host country to sell their product, then we call it as direct selling. Whereas in the case of indirect selling, what we are trying to do is leverage the domestic channel, the distribution channel that we are perhaps using locally, which is not being under the company's umbrella, but it's a third party who is providing the distribution service, even in the home country. And we are taking their help to sell our products outside the country. So, in that case, they are called as indirect channels. So, direct channels are when you're selling directly to people in a particular country. Say, for example, in United Kingdom, I have some agents who sell my products, then it's a direct channel. And when I'm using the sources available in my home country, and then using these domestic sources or agents to sell my products abroad, then it becomes an indirect channel. And what are these people called who help us in this process? They are called as sales intermediaries, they may be called middlemen, they may be called agents, they may be called marketing channels for this particular selling process. So they may have multiple names. At the end of the day, the kind of functioning, I hope by now, is very clear between indirect and direct channels. So the intermediary, who is that person? It can be a domestic agent, like we have been talking about, who does not take title to the goods. That means they're helping us move a product from a domestic country to the host country where is planning to sell a product, but they do not take title to the goods. That means they do not own the goods. They're only helping us in the shipping process and maybe the warehousing process. The second one is a domestic merchant who actually takes title to the goods. So a domestic agent does not take title to the goods, whereas a domestic merchant takes title to the goods. That means the company is actually selling to the domestic merchant under some conditions of credit, etc. And a domestic merchant now owns the goods because he has purchased it from the manufacturer and he in turn will supply it abroad. So there are several advantages of have using an indirect domestic channel. For example, it is simple, right? Because you already are familiar with how they function in your local market. They are not so expensive. Also, the company itself does not require any startup costs to set up an entire unit abroad. The responsibility of physically moving the goods from one country of origin to the country of sale rests now on a third party, and so the risks involved are reduced for the company. So, at the same time, we also need to understand that indirect channel also has certain limitations. And what are they? One, while the manufacturing company is relieved of the marketing costs or the distribution costs, at the end of the day, they are giving the control of the marketing to another firm, right? Because this is a third party. Neither are they customers nor are they the manufacturers. This is a third party who is helping to ship the goods or services. So, if the company is looking at a long term reach in that particular nation, then definitely to a certain extent they are at a disadvantageous position because they are not, selling the product under their own brand name. If they're going through, say, a domestic merchant, or they're tying up internationally with another company who may be labeling it under their own brand name. So there are certain aspects that need to be considered. Also, the manufacturer becomes a little vulnerable. And why is that so? Where there are a lot of competitors, and sometimes the merchants may be shipping more than one company's products, and they are competitors. So there is always the fear that the best practices of one company can be transferred to another company. So these are all fears that needs to be considered. And what happens if there is no profit channel or better profit potential? The situation is different, right? If there is no profit expectation, then it makes sense in the long run to go for an indirect channel. But suppose there is potential to grow your product in the international market, then it may actually be at a disadvantage to the manufacturing company not to sell the product under their own brand name and not to take uh, responsibility for the logistics and distribution of their products. So we also talked about direct selling, where we said that it is a manufacturer who is taking the advantage and help of an overseas channel to supply their products and services. So here, what happens is when it is set up in the overseas market, there are a lot of rules and regulations which are being governed not only from the home country but also the host country in terms of shipment, in terms of cargo size, in terms of packaging, in terms of the credit line. So there are multiple considerations that and how much stake, who has how much stake. So all these have to be considered. So direct selling is a little more complicated than indirect selling in that very sense. But there is a certain advantage. What is that advantage? The direct channel member will have a better understanding of the local marketing conditions. What is the culture? What are the socio-political ramifications, what is the legal structure, how do those customers in that particular country respond to certain products, what are the customers expectations, so they are able to in a way better exploit the international market when it is a direct channel member. So the another advantages, of course, greater control because the channel member is already settled abroad. They know the local conditions. They have better control because they know what can go wrong, what will go wrong, what is the expectations from all the macro environmental factors, and how do they need to set up their systems so that they are in line with the local conditions. So there is also a disadvantage, right? Where there's an advantage, there has to be a disadvantage, and both need to be considered before taking a decision. So disadvantages could be in terms of kind consumption, expensive, because it's not easy to find an international partner. It's a little easier to find a domestic partner to help you move your products and sell overseas. And then, if there is no large volume of business, the international partner, that is the direct sales channel, may not be interested in selling your product in that market. They also have certain branding issues. So, if their brand is good, then the manufacturer can leverage the direct sales channel partner's brand. If the brand is not good, then it will affect in turn the manufacturer's brand name. And if they are especially looking at establishing a long term presence in the international market, then it can work out to be a difficult situation to traverse in the long term. So, what are these types of intermediaries? Let us look at direct channel first. There are several of them. The first one is known as a foreign distributor. So, who is a foreign distributor? A foreign distributor is a foreign firm that has exclusive rights to carry out distribution for a manufacturer in a foreign country or specific area. Orders must be channeled through them. Even when the distributor chooses to appoint a sub-agent or sub-distributor. And the distributor actually purchases the products from the manufacturer and they in turn sell it at a slightly higher price because they would have got a discount from the manufacturer, but they sell it at a slightly higher price to their channel partners, that is the sub-distributor or other distributors. And uh, and so it goes. And also, we need to understand that a foreign distributor, whether they are an importer or a wholesaler, because then the scope of how they are going to partner with the business, that is the original manufacturer, is going to be very different. The second one is a foreign retailer. So, who is this foreign retailer? Retailers are used where they actually sell consumer products rather than industrial products. So, there are several means by which a manufacturer can contact foreign retailers and consider their interest in partnering. So, how this can be in terms of a personal visit by the manufacturer's representatives, to the retailers' outlets in a different land, or it can be through mailing of catalogs, brochures, other literature to prospective retailers. So, use of a personal visit or selling is a little expensive in the short term. However, there are certain advantages there as well, because you are able to assess your foreign retailer partner better when you meet them in person, understand what their considerations are in taking a partnership in their fold, and you can also understand a little of the market sense. How does the market function? Who are the customers? What are the kind of sales? What can be the volume that has to be manufactured? Any specific, localizations that need to be required in terms of language, or in terms of packaging, or in terms of shape and size. So these are all easier to assess when you go directly to a nation of intent, rather than going purely through a foreign retailer. However, there is also the aspect of higher costs involved, because someone has to go abroad, and they have to stay there, they have to travel. So there are certain other aspects to be considered from both ends. So in Europe, for example, a number of retail food chains are becoming larger and more powerful, and they prefer to be in direct contact with foreign manufacturers in order to get price concessions. So when this kind of a scenario occurs, the retailer is also very, very clear in terms of wanting to partner with bigger brands, or where there are better margins, or where there is already it's a big ticket item. That means the cost or volume of the product is high, or it is already a known brand, right? So then we also have the third type, that is a state controlled trading company. So in direct channel, the what the state controlled trading company talks about is particularly in terms of state, that is the nation controlled companies, which become your retail channel partners. So this is more common in utility and telecommunication equipment, which is highly regularized. So the government may insist that certain goods and services have to go through their official state-owned distribution partners. So the companies have to toe the line accordingly. It can be in terms of agricultural machinery, it can be in terms of raw materials, manufacturing equipment, technical equipment, etc. The likelihood of it being consumer or household goods is, however, far less, because it is low ticket items. Each item doesn't cost much, and it is directly reaching the consumers who are actually going to use those particular products. The next one is a direct method, where we are using our channel to contact the end user. So, what does this mean? That means that there are certain products or certain end users who do not go through any intermediary. They are directly involved in the point of purchase. That means directly from the manufacturer, the product is moving to a foreign end user. So here the approach is very practical in some cases where there is high ticket volumes, or high cost, or more products need a lot of customization, lot of localization, and it is very, very customer centric, and customer expectations in terms of value addition is very high. Then it makes sense. But however, not all products can go through this particular channel member, that is direct sale to end user. So here, what the company does is it also utilizes some magazines, like we have spoken about in the last session, like Time, Newsweek, Business Week, where the customers are able to place an order directly on a particular number, or a particular contact email ID, or at a particular address, and then the product is shipped to them directly. So those are the different types of intermediaries in a direct channel, where the channel is not from the channel of origin. That means it is not from the same country as the manufacturer, but it is based on the host country where the product is going to be sold. However, as we have been talking about, indirect channel is where the channel origin and the manufacturing origin is the same. That is from a single country. So, for a majority of products, a manager may find it, a company may find it impractical to sell directly to the various foreign parties. We have talked about foreign distributors, foreign retailers, state controlled companies, and end users, four of them. So they can also be other intermediaries who come between foreign buyers and the manufacturer. So what is the role of these intermediaries or middlemen that we are looking at? So in an indirect channel, fundamentally we're talking about two broad categories. We just spoke about them in a few minutes ago. One is the domestic agent and second is the domestic merchant. So we have understood that domestic agents never take ownership to the title. That means they never own the goods as such. They're only helping to move the goods from one location to the final location. So, whereas if you take in terms of the domestic merchants, they actually take title to the goods. So that means they actually purchase the goods from the manufacturer. They own the merchandise, and at the end of the day, the merchant has more leeway in terms of where they're selling and how they are selling and at what margins. A manufacturer may set certain conditions. It may be a part of the agreement because there cannot be a long gap between what the manufacturer sets in one country and what is being sold in another country. There has to be some kind of a parity. Unless, like we have been repeatedly highlighting, there is certain rules and regulations in terms of packaging or package sizes or certain items which need to have certain state approvals like food items. So unless that happens, that fundamental difference between an agent and a merchant, as we have understood by now, is that one, agents don't take title to the goods, but merchants take possession of the goods, or even if they do not take possession directly, they are, taking title to the goods. So, another important difference that we need to understand is an agent represents the manufacturer, whereas a merchant, that is a distributor, represents the manufacturer's product. See the difference. So, an agent represents the manufacturer, whereas a domestic merchant represents the manufacturer's product. That is a very critical importance. And why so? Particularly when you're talking in terms of taking ownership of the goods, right? Since a merchant is taking ownership of the goods or the products, they are directly interested in what the product by itself is offering to the customer and how they're able to reach the end user and how do they use the various aspects of product price, place, and promotion to ensure that there is a high volume of sales. However, a merchant has no power to contract on the behalf of the manufacturer. This is also another important differentiation between an agent and a distributor. Whereas an agent can bind a manufacturer because they are authorized. They're representing the merchants, they're representing the manufacturers, right? So they are authorized to represent the manufacturer even in terms of an agreement. So now when we talk in terms of agents, let's deep dive into the different types of agents that are existing in the market as on date. So the first and foremost thing is they can be classified according to the principal whom they represent. Whom do they represent? So the agent intermediaries represent the buyer, others represent the interest of the manufacturer. So that difference also occurs. So those who work for the manufacturer include export brokers, manufacturers, export agents, or sales representatives, export management companies, and finally, cooperative exporters. So let's look at each of them in a little more detail. Today, when we are talking in terms of export broker, the first one that we are looking at is what is the function of this export broker. So the function is to bring a buyer and a seller together for a fee, which is very, very self-explanatory, right? Now, when there is a buyer and there is an agent, but imagine a scenario where there's no seller, right? Then the whole process becomes a useless game altogether. And an agent never works without a fee. So it's always based on a fee. Now, how is the fee determined? We'll talk about it in more detail later. But this is to be clearly understood. So the broker may be assigned one or all foreign markets in seeking a potential buyer. And it negotiates, we said, right, that they represent the manufacturer, not the manufacturer's product. So they can negotiate on behalf of the manufacturer. So they negotiate on behalf of the manufacturer for selling the product at the best terms for the seller, that is the manufacturer. But they cannot conclude the transaction without the principal agreement in writing of the manufacturer. So they are only acting as an agent, as we understand. However, they're trying to bridge the link between a manufacturer and a potential foreign buyer. Now, when we talk of a potential foreign buyer, we've already understood that it can be a distributor, a wholesaler, or even an end user in a foreign market. So, at the same time, the export broker may operate under its own name or that of the manufacturer. So, any action that is performed, the broker receives a fee or commission. So, an export broker does not take position or title to the goods. We have stressed this sufficiently. However, at the same time, it also works out in their advantage because there is no financial responsibility of the agent by themselves, right? So, what is happening here is if a transaction goes through from a manufacturer to an ultimate buyer or a retailer or a distributor in a foreign market, that for every such transaction, the agent may either get a fixed amount, a percentage amount, or an annual amount. However, in most cases, it is transaction by transaction that they get a certain commission. And also, an export agent is not so involved in actual shipment of the product. They may help the manufacturer make arrangements. They may connect them to the right people who are able to support logistically. However, they're not actually involved in the shipping process. So, at the end of the day, the agent is considered as a valuable associate for particularly highly specialized goods or seasonal products that do not require constant distribution. So, if you are exporting, say, fruits or vegetables or grains or seafood or dairy food, which is seasonal in nature, then definitely using the help of an agent makes sense. But for products which require continuous shipment, there is a continuous demand for the product, then a channel manufacturers uh, uh, buddy in that case would be more of a maybe a merchant or somebody who can work on it on a long term basis and is not transaction oriented but is either volume oriented or timeline oriented. So, manufacturer's export agent or sales representative. This here we have already spoken about this. Because of the title of the intermediary, one may think that an export agent or sales representative for a manufacturer's employee is actually a part of the company's employee base. However, it's not so. They have their own identity and they are not using the manufacturer's name. They're not part of the employment of the manufacturer. So they therefore have more freedom than a manufacturer's own salesperson, a sales representative in this case, because they are doing their own business, so they can select when, where, and how to work within the assigned territory. We also know that an export agent may be representing the company in more than one nation. So, a broker and an export agent fundamentally work on the basis of a commission. However, unlike a broker, the relationship with the manufacturer is convenient and more permanent. So, very often, when people are talking about brokers and they're talking about agents, they use them as synonyms. However, there is a small difference. A broker is only working on, though also on a transaction and commission basis, it is sporadic. Whereas in the case of an agent, it is more long term and enduring. So the contract may be definitely for a specific period of time. It could be 3 months. It could be like in seasonal products that we have considered, like fruits, vegetables, dairy products, or it can be more long term, or it can be in terms of territory. It can be restricted to one specific nation or multiple nations. There can be a terms of sale that if only a sale is actually done and the amount is recovered, only then will the agent get commission. There can be a method of compensation. It need not always be transaction to transaction basis, in the sense that for every transaction you immediately get a percentage. You may actually couple it up with other sales that are done through the month or through the quarter or through the year and get as a lump sum. It depends on the kind of agreements they have. And services such as advertising, credit assistance, repair, and installation may be excluded from that being offered by a manufacturer's export agent. They are not going to represent such kind of issues. However, we also said that in the case of such an understanding, the loss or risk attached to a manufacturer is very, very high, because at the end of the day, they are responsible for the product right from the manufacturing to the actual sale point. So, if anything goes wrong, it is a manufacturer who is at a loss. The next one that is to be considered is Export Management Company, or EMC in short. So, an EMC also is known as a combination export manager. So, here the function is almost similar to that of an export department. However, it represents several allied but non competing manufacturers. This is a very interesting thing, and you need to consider the subtle variation here. We are saying they're allied but not competitive. For example, if one manufacturer is selling food products based on fruits and vegetables, and another manufacturer is selling products which are based on grains and cereals, then they're allied because they're both in a food industry. However, they're not competitors because they're not selling the same products. So EMC has a higher level of freedom. At the same time, they offer an extensive level of services. It can be right from promotion to shipping arrangement and the final documentation. Unlike an agent, we said agent is particularly not involved in the shipping process or distribution process, but an EMC is involved from on multiple fronts. So here, the difference, another difference is that the agent, unlike an agent, the EMC also solicits business in the name of the manufacturer and not necessarily in their under their own name. So, why would a firm want to consider an EMC? because it seems like there is a double risk there. It can easily be dropped by its clients either for doing a poor job or making the manufacturer's products too successful, right? And beating the local business. So then why would a firm choose an EMC? Because it has international marketing expertise and distribution contacts overseas. And for many services that are provided, EMC costs are relatively low due to efficiencies of scale. However, we also need to consider that the costs are spread over products of several manufacturers. So that is why also the costs come down when you go to an EMC. And EMC also provides a certain shipping efficiency because it can consolidate various allied manufacturers and ensure that the shipment is made through a single container or half a container. Maybe all products are being shipped by, either by road or rail or air, depending on how the nation's boundaries are. Water is a very good example of overseas shipments. So all these factors have to be considered. The next one is a cooperative exporter. So who is a cooperative exporter? They are a manufacturer with their own export organization. All right, but they are retained. That means they are hired by other manufacturers to sell in some or all foreign markets. This is a very common scenario in, say, products like clothes, apparel, where you are leveraging on the expertise of another company which is also selling similar products. However, because they have a lot of efficiency in the local market, they have a better understanding. So it sometimes makes sense to piggyback on such cooperative exporters who are not only exporting their own products, but they are also taking the products of other companies from a similar origin and exporting them. So here we are talking about a cooperative exporter who's like a mother hen or a piggy bank exporter or an export vendor. Some of the more common names are GE, for example, General Electric or Singer or Borgwarner. Singer, as we know, has various sewing machines under its umbrella. Some they export under their own brand name, but they also carry the shipments of other competitors who are also selling sewing machines. Then the next format that we consider is that of a purchasing or buying agent. So here we are talking so far about a selling agent. Now we are talking about a buying agent. So an export agent represents a seller or manufacturer, whereas a purchasing or buying agent represents a foreign buyer. So here, because they're residing and conducting business in the exporter's own country, the purchasing agent is in a favorable position because one, they know the local market conditions, they know who are the competitors, which products are being sold, at what price, what are the variations in the product, what is the technology involved, how is the reception to such products. So they have a lot of marketing insights, and that is why a purchasing or buying agent can pick and choose which products to actually select so that they can sell it in their country. Again, they may be working based on a commission, or they may be having certain other considerations, financial agreements in place. But what needs to be understood is that this arrangement does not necessarily offer a steady volume of business for the manufacturer, and neither does it offer any reduction in financial risk in because the transaction between the manufacturer and the buying agent who is representing the buyer, it may be completed as a domestic transaction, and the agent takes care of all the arrangements, or it can be that the manufacturer themselves have to make all the transportation and logistical arrangements, and the buyer agent only receives those products and then distributes them locally and sells them. So, what kind of risks are involved in these different settings? The next one is a country controlled buying agent. So we have considered earlier that in certain companies, particularly some nations, they insist that certain companies who are selling in their nation on their shows have to go through the state-owned agents, through the state-owned buying agents, and this is particularly true for certain types of manufacturing products. It can be certain agricultural produce. It can be in terms of conductors, semiconductors, that kind of a parts business where there is a lot of regulation, both in terms of safety and in terms of uh, uh, um, you know um, highlighting and guarding the local resources. So, if a large amount of imports are done of agricultural produce and your own farmers are being hit because of this, or your or local industries are being hit because of this, then the country may decide that the buying agents, which are representing the state or the nation, may actually reduce the level of import to a more comfortable number. Then we also have a resident buyer. So the next variation of purchasing agent, that is the resident buyer, is one who is an independent agent that is usually located near the centralized production industries. So functioning is that of a regular purchasing agent. However, the resident buyer is different. In what way? Because they are retained by the principal on a continuous basis to maintain a search for new products that may be suitable for their market. The long term relationship here makes a possible advantage for the resident buyer because they are compensated with a retainer and a commission for actual business that is transacted. So they may even end up with double gains. And the next one that is of significance is that of an export merchant. So intermediaries covered so far have certain factors in common. And what are they? They neither take the risk nor title to the product. They also prefer to receive fees for their services. That is the commission. But unlike these middlemen, when we talk in terms of merchants and domestic merchants, they're independent businesses. They're not individuals, but they are companies themselves. And they rather want to make a profit than a commission on each transaction. So the orientation of a merchant is very different from that of an agent. So the next thing that needs to be also understood is that because they take the title to the product, they are distinguished by other features such as physical possession of goods and services rendered. Whereas we said in the case of an agent, they do not take physical title to the goods or services. So, an export manufacturer also seeks out the products which will certainly fulfill the needs and wants of people who are in that host country. So, it is always from their perspective, that is the end user, that these agents function from. And then we have an export shipper. So, an export drop shipper is also known as desk jobber or cable merchant. And what is their role? It is a special kind of export merchant. So, they are also export merchants, but they have certain specialization. So, here, as the very name implies, the mode of operation requires the drop shipper to request a manufacturer to drop ship a product directly to the overseas customer. So the manufacturer is there, the customer is there, and then the drop shipper is only ensuring that the product safely reaches the end user. They are not getting involved in the direct transaction process of shipment from one end to another end. However, they're connecting the manufacturer and the end user. So the export drop shipper places an order with the manufacturer, and they direct the manufacturer to deliver the goods directly to the foreign buyer. So drop shipper is very common in international marketing, particularly in products which are bulky, or low unit volume, that is coal, lumber, construction materials. So they have uh, a huge space or volume that is to be considered. So it doesn't make sense for a manufacturer to take the product and send it to the export merchant, and they in turn send it to the end user. So there's a lot of cost that is involved and also the process is lengthy. The kind of documentation that are required are lengthy. So it becomes a highly complicated aspect. There is also another point to be considered, the time lag between a product from the manufacturer ultimately reaching the buyer. So that is why these drop shippers, though they are also export merchants, they enable this kind of a direct drop of the product to the end user. And then we also have an export distributor. So the export merchants and drop shippers purchase from a manufacturer whenever they receive orders from overseas. So an export distributor, on the other hand, deals with the manufacturer on a continuous basis. So in the case of an export merchant, what did we say? It is transactional. Once they have an order, then they reach out to the manufacturer and make the connect. Whereas in the case of an export distributor, it is more continuous. It is long term, and the process is continued in terms of various cycles, and it is not transaction based. So they pay for the goods in the domestic transaction with the manufacturer. They handle all financial risks in a foreign trade or foreign market. So an export distributor differs from a foreign distributor simply in terms of location. So the foreign distributor, where are they located? They are located in a foreign country and they're authorized to distribute and sell the products there. Whereas the export distributor is operating from the country of origin or from the same place as that of a manufacturer. And they from here, they handle all the shipping requirements, all the documentations, the financials, and like we said, they also take title to the goods, and they also that means in turn have a lot of risks that they are willing to absorb because they see certain profit in doing this kind of business. Then we also have a trading company. Now, what is this trading company? A trading company is those that often have no knowledge of each other or no knowledge of how to contact each other. So, trading companies fill the void. So, the manufacturer doesn't know what kind of agent I can reach out to, or what is the kind of merchant. Is it export merchant or is it a foreign merchant? How do I make the connect between whether I choose between a direct channel or an indirect channel? A lot of complications are there. So what the trading company does, it helps making the connect between the company on one hand and the agent or merchant on the other hand, and advises them both in terms of whether to go for a direct or indirect channel. The advice may be limited. However, they do give certain clarity in terms of what are the options available to the manufacturer, so the manufacturer can take a more wiser decision. So, and there is also another thing that happens here. like it resembles an AMC in the sense that it represents several companies, except for the fact that it has more direct product lines, right? More diverse product lines as well. So if I'm selling, say, I'm connecting between companies. I'm not only helping company from a packaged food to a packaged food. It can be raw food like fruits and all, which are not processed in the real sense, and that is an allied industry. It can be milk and dairy products. It can be seafood. It can be other fisheries or other items as well. So the product lines can be multiple. It can be soaps, it can be cosmetics, it can be shampoos. Again, diverse product lines, and the manufacturer may be the same for all of them. So it also offers more services. It's larger, better finance. They take title to the ownership, and that means to the merchandise, and therefore they represent the merchandise, that is the product. It is also not restricted only to export trade. They may be also doing internal trade as well in terms of their own home country. And their role goes beyond that of a normal intermediary in the sense that they not only provide export facilitation services, they also engage possibly in production or physical distribution channel or financing and even resource development. So there's a lot that is to be considered. And then we have the channel development. And what is it, how is this important and how does it affect a manufacturer? So here we are saying that while there can be a distribution channel which is from one country to one other country or to several other countries, the temperature gradient to classify countries is highly characteristic. In what terms? One is in terms of political stability. Second is in terms of market opportunity. It can be in terms of economic development and performance. We have been talking about developed countries, developing countries, emerging countries, etc. Cultural unity, how similar they are. Asia as a bloc is considered as a block or a region which has certain cultural unity. However, if you see in terms of the family orientation or in terms of the type of goods that are bought or the type of packaging or other trade restrictions that are applicable. We talked about NATO, North American Treaty Organization, where they have their own set of rules, or the European bloc, which has its own cultural unity, which actually also affects how their trading is done across those countries. So there can be legal barriers or restrictions, physiographic barriers, and also the geographic considerations. Then, in terms of the channel adaptation, the company finally decides that a standardized approach is necessary. However, it is not necessary that it has to be always so. The in certain countries, the company may follow one channel as a process as its partner, and in another country or in another block, trading block, it may go for an entirely different marketing channel. So it is very very specific, not only to the company, to the home nation, but also the host nation, and what are the rules and regulations there, and what are the barriers that are there, trade barriers that have to be considered, what are the legal restrictions that apply, what are the cultural diversities, what is the homogeneity and heterogeneity of that group of end users. So there are multiple considerations that have to be taken into account. So, for example, if you were to see countries like the blocks like Africa, Latin America, Asia, we know that there are different conditions that apply to each of these blocks. Whereas if you talk in terms of a US supermarket, they may decide that they're willing to go for a low gross margin because they know that there will be a higher volume of sales, and therefore they are willing to take products at a lower margin. Whereas in some countries, they may not do so. Unless there is a sufficient margin for them, they may not be willing to take your products onto their product line. So the channel decisions are based on certain characteristics. What are they? First is the channel length. So when you talk in terms of a channel length, we are saying what are the different levels or different steps, or who are the intermediaries involved, how many are involved, right from the manufacturer to the end user. So the more the channel length, that means the time lag is higher, the cost may be higher, the complexity of documentation is higher, the number of people involved is higher, and so if you're at any point in time, if any one of those lines break, then everything gets affected in that specific line, and you may find it difficult to replace that line or part of the line with another channel if that line is very, very rigid. So, channel line and channel length. The second one is the channel width. That is the number of middlemen to a particular point or step in the distribution channel. So channel width is a function of the number of wholesalers and the different kinds that are used, as well as a function of the different and number of retailers who are used. So how many retailers are willing to sell your products? Is it one single retailer? Is it multiple retailers in one particular city or location, or is it the same retailer who is going to represent you across the entire nation? So these are aspects that should be taken into account. And then there are also certain determinants of channel types. So here we are talking in terms of legal regulations, product image. We are talking of product characteristics. For example, is it low priced? Is it high turnover, convenience products? Is the requirement there for an intensive